Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host Rashid, and this is an impromptu late evening show. We'll address a few things and we'll just jump off after that. I just want to talk to you for a few minutes because I got a couple emails and I got a few people asking a few things. So someone asked me why haven't I discussed the situation between what the justice system is doing with Donald Trump and how it's a double standard against Joe Biden. Well, let me put this like this. Let me tell you something. A lot of the times when things happen, um, when it affects certain people, then it becomes news, right? Then it becomes mainstream, and then it becomes an issue. But we have been talking about the hypocriticalness of the justice system and how it picks and chooses who it shall prosecute and who it shall not prosecute. We've been talking about the racial part of it, the cultural part of it. We've been addressing all these things. Now, the reason that I had not said much about this is because the system is eating itself now. And what I mean by that, and people may take offense to this, but listen to me first, okay? Before you take offense to this, listen to me. All right. Now, we know that Joe Biden has committed multiple crimes in office. We know that Obama had done it, right? We knew that Trump had did it. We knew that Bush and all of his predecessors had committed multiple crimes in office, right? They weren't prosecuted. They weren't put in jail. We see world leaders around in Africa that do the bidding of the West, and after they've done the bidding of the West and they fall out of favor with them, they are then issued warrants by the illegal, immoral ICC, the International Criminal Court, and then they take these African leaders, these Latin American leaders, and these Asian leaders, and they take them to the Hague. I want you to understand what I'm saying here. Listen close to me. The Hague, the Hague resides in a nation that was a colonial nation, right? That never paid reparations for its colonial bid, okay? And then they are judged in that criminal court system by nations that still occupy parts of Latin America, parts of Asia, and parts of Africa, okay? This is the way the Western system is. I warned you that the system would start eating itself. As long as, and listen to me good, as long as it affected minorities, so-called quote-unquote minorities, it was not such a big issue. And on an everyday basis, they talk about the hypocrisy and the unjust justice system, and it gets pushed away as people complaining or this. But now that it is affecting someone that is representing a movement that touches on the side of the majority in America, it becomes an issue. Now, I have no problem with addressing it. I just wanted them to ask me to address it so that I can bring this about. Now, listen to this. On a daily basis around America, there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of cases that are being prosecuted, and they are illegal, immoral, unjust, and false prosecutions. But because we have a high-profile person, right? A high-profile person, it becomes an issue. But when we look at the scheme of things, what about all of the Black and Latinos who are falsely prosecuted in the system? What I'm trying to do, see, if you don't have empathy for others, you can't expect those who you have no empathy for to sympathize with your causes. Am I saying that I don't sympathize? I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to do is show you the hypocrisy of the system. And we're going to address the hypocrisy of the system as it prosecutes Trump, because it is prosecuting Trump because he's not the average political figure. But what I try to do is show you, take these things and show you learning lessons so that you can better deal with other people. Because when you start seeing what the other person or ethnicity is going through, and then you can empathize with that, then it may lend more credence to your screams and your cries out for empathy for situations like that. All right? The system is not just unjust when it affects a certain portion of the population. Either it's unjust to every sector of the population, right? Or it is just to every sector of the population. And we know that it is not just to every sector of the population. We know that. Even the FBI report says as much. Even the government's own reporting on the criminal justice system says as much. So when we look at what is happening to Trump and how they're trying to prevent him from getting into office and how they're trying to stop the movement that he has, you also have to look at it with the thousands of incarcerated black and brown and red and yellow and poor white people that are being eaten and gobbled up by an unjust system. You just can't limit it to Trump because he is in the public's view and because he has money and because he speaks to the issues of a certain portion of the population. You've got to either, listen, when there's injustice for one, then there is injustice for all. Okay? Now we'll address this. Salute to my guy. Real Truth Talk is in the building. Salute to my guy. Yeah. Now listen. I just turned and I just saw it. Now, listen. Are they prosecuting Trump illegally? Sure they are. You know they are. Now, is Trump a threat to the system? A little bit. A little bit. I believe his mannerism and his being very vocal about certain things that touch to the that might hurt the deep state, I believe that is scaring them, even though they still have ways and levers to control him. Remember now, as Trump ran for president before, he said that he would do X, Y, and Z, this, and this. And when he got in office, though most of those things were never done. Okay? So evidently, he's not such a great threat to the system as most people make out. Right? So I just want you to understand that. Now, because he is not a career politician, because he has his own money, and because he is speaking to a movement of people that feel now that they are disenfranchised. Never mind you, when other sections of the population of America felt disenfranchised, it was pushed to the side by the very sector that feels disenfranchised right now. But anyway, but because he's a loose cannon, so they don't put their full trust in him because he's not a career politician, even though they have a lot on him. But because he is speaking and he has a movement, yeah, they're moving against him. Now, it's ironic that all of the indictments and the charges came out against Trump the very day that they were talking about Trump, Biden's involvement in these Ukrainian scandals and Hunter Biden's portfolio of criminal activities. And when this was finally making the headlines, the very same day, multiple indictments came out on Trump. Now, what are we seeing? We're seeing the system imploding. Now, because everybody is at each other's throat. And what did Jesus say? A house divided cannot stand, right? Now, listen to this. This goes back to what we call judgment. This goes back to what we call karma. In the base of the universe, it's called what goes around comes around. Even to this very moment, America is destroying governments around the globe and stoking ethnic strife and tensions and divisions so that she can deploy her military over there to control strategic waterways, to control the airways, to control the land routes, and to control the mineral resources in those areas of the globe. Without a second thought, she does that, right? That's a divide and conquer tactic. Well, listen, the so-called most powerful and the so-called richest nation on earth is imploding. We see it in the justice system. We see it in the political system. We see it in the just what is pervasive in society today. Everybody is suspecting everybody else of being against them. Everybody is screaming that everybody else is against them. And then when you look to the people that should offer guidance and leadership, they're at each other's throat. As thou hast done, so shall it be done unto thee. This divide and conquer technique and tactic that America, Great Britain, and the Western world continuously use to destroy the power and the viability of any rising power is now back in the bedroom of the American and the Western empire. This is what's going on. So when you see them fighting, they're fighting over positions of power in a direction that they feel which better suits their compatriots or their constituents, okay? America just did that in Sudan. Why is not the uproar over that? Huh? America just divided Sudan because Sudan offered Russia a basing facility for its naval fleet. Why is there no uproar over that? Why is there no uproar that America is balkanizing Syria right now? Why is there no uproar about what Israel is doing to Palestine? Why is there no uproar of Britain still occupying the Malvinas Islands? In the West, it is known as the Falkland Islands. But Argentina and the Latin American nations recognize that as the Malvinas Islands, right? Why is there no uproar about France claiming that former colonial states are independent and yet sending in troops and police forces to uproot dissidents that are against French colonial power and rule in those nations? See, a divide and conquer. So as it blows back on the West, people are in uproar. But I continue to tell you that America and the West, they are not the exception to the rule. They believe so. See, America and the West have ruled successively for centuries. And they've been able to get away with anybody, and they've been able to hold everybody else to account of disobeying their rules, their laws, and their policies. Even to this day, America and Great Britain and the European Union are still doing this with their extrajudicial, extraterritorial laws, their sanctions. Look, they have a beef with Russia, and then they want to force everybody else in the world to take their view, to take their side through sanctions. If you violate our sanctions, we're going to sanction you. Think about that. These are supposedly sovereign states that make independent sovereign policies that govern their sovereign land. And the United States and the West is trying to impose upon these sovereign states, these sovereign nations, their policies, their dictates, and trying to bring them into a fight that they don't belong in. And if you don't side with the West, they sanction you, they threaten you. Those are extrajudicial, extraterritorial laws. What I'm saying to you is, listen, America and the West believes that they're the kings. And I'm going back to Trump in a minute. So don't think I got off of that. They've been ruling so long, they cannot fathom anybody acting outside of their command, their laws, their dictates, their policies. And so all of these international institutions were set up under the cover of offering all nations a say. But in reality, all of the power or most of the power of decision-making lies with the West, right? And if you don't agree with them, they'll sanction you. If you don't agree with them, they'll bypass their own organizations to inflict harm on whom they deem is a threat to the policies and their initiatives that they're trying to put over on everybody else. Everybody that's listening knows that I'm not lying. I'm not making this stuff up. So what America, the UK, and the European Union is trying to do is to legitimize their policies of colonialization. Because if you force me to accept your view and your laws on my sovereign state and my sovereign government, I become an extension of your nation. I become an extension of your policy, which means I'm a colony of you. Right? Am I? For those of you in the chat, am I telling you the truth? Hey, that's what I'm talking about. And Real Truth Talk says, yeah, U.S. has a history of that kind of bully behavior. That's what I'm saying. Not just the U.S. though. The Western world. Just take any Western nation, put all of them names in the hat, shake the hat up, and then pull one of them out. It doesn't matter which one. They have a history of trying to force everybody else to their dictates, to their will, to their policies, to their initiatives. And if you don't accept it, they vilify you, they demonize you, and they use this terminology to inadvertently call you delegitimize your nation. Excuse me, my computer just popped. Something just popped up on my computer. Excuse me. Okay. They use words like regime and so-called government, right? And dictator and tyrant, right? They use these. Now I want you to, this is a fascist government. We are about democracy. Well, democracy, according to the West, is the will of the people, and even allows for the voice of the unheard to be heard, right? Now, if America is a democracy, then why is she ignoring the masses of the people who are telling her to stop spending all their money on war? Huh? Why is she ignoring the masses and even the lesser herd of her population, saying, listen, instead of you giving all of these billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine, redirect that money to us. We're in your nation. We are your people. We're your constituents, and we're hurting economically. But the government turns a deaf ear, a blind eye, and a dumb tongue, right? To the very people and constituents they claim to represent in the great so-called democracy, while trying to force feed democracy to the world. Now, I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question to everybody, because we hear this terminology a lot being espoused by all of the Western leaders, okay? This so-called democracy, right? If Western democracy was so fantastic, then why do you have to hold the barrel of a gun to every nation's head to force them to accept it? I'm asking. Because when something is good and people see that it's good, they run towards it, right? They don't have to be cajoled. They don't have to be coerced. They don't have to be forced into it. When something is good and beneficial for them, they usually 9 times out of 10 run towards it. But what we're seeing is the opposite. Why? Because the democracy that America and the West offers is subjugation to them. You must be subjugated to them. And anytime you have an independent thought, an independent policy, it is not accepted and it's not allowed, because it runs contrary to me, America, being the great big boss. The UK, I'm the junior partner, and the European Union, we're the lesser of the three. It runs contrary to their policy dictates. Now, when we look at Trump and we look at these charges against him, was he guilty of some of them? I don't know. I don't care. But he was the president. And now, I want to bring something back to you. They got Trump on holding unclassified documents. Now, as the president, you classify and declassify anything you want at will. That is your prerogative as being the president. So, first of all, that should just nullify what they're talking about. Second of all, why hasn't anybody talked about Joe Biden? I know they're talking about it, finding stuff in his garage, right? But nobody's telling you that he took the stuff when he was vice president. He did not have the prerogative to declassify or classify anything. Yet they found classified documents in his garage. As the vice president at the time, he did not have the authority. You know how a lot of people like to talk about the Constitution, right? The Constitution did not give him that discretionary power to classify and declassify. That was at the helm of the president. So when they found these, why aren't they that concerned? He's the president now, but he was the vice president then, and they found it now. So why are they after Trump and not after Biden? I have no hunt. I have no dog in the race. I have no dog in this hunt, and I have no horse in the race. But I call the facts facts. A lot of people don't like to talk about this because it may alienate their subscriber base. So, man, I don't care nothing about that. If you don't want to hear the truth, you don't have to be here. I would love for you to accept it. I would love for us to be able to talk like adults. But you won't hold me captive to you being a subscriber. That's not how this works. If I have to talk to just one person or to myself with this truth, I'm going to do that. Because there's principles behind it, like on Friday. There's principalities behind this. For those of you who watch the movie Friday, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah. So again, I want like to. I see. Let's see. This thing is popping up here. YouTube, stop this. YouTube keeps sending something on my screen, blocking it. Astral Atmosphere says New York can't breathe. Highways falling. Thousands of fish. You know what? I saw that earlier. Thousands of fish in Texas Ocean wash on shore. Revelation is upon us. Well, as thou hast done, so shall it be done unto thee. Now, again, you are not going to get around that biblical verse. You're not going to get around that because that is in the very base of science. And we're watching this stuff happen in real time. Like I said, I'm not going to hold you long, but I'm going to talk to you for a little bit. I'm going to talk to you for a little bit, and I'm going to give you my opinion on this stuff. If you ask, I'll go to the chat in a second. So if you have something you want posted, post in the chat, and I'll put it up on the screen if you want. But I want to go to something real quick on the, where is it at? Let's see if I can pull this up. All right, let's go here. Trump. It says Trump. It's talking about Trump right here. It says the former president has pleaded not guilty to 37 counts of obstruction, false statements, and mishandling of classified documents. Now, as the president, I thought that was your prerogative to be able to classify and declassify documents at will, because you are supposed to be the ultimate decision maker when it comes to the interests and the security of your nation. I thought that. Other presidents did it. But no, there was no big brouhaha like it is like this, like now, right? And these charges are meant to weaken his position and maybe even strike a deal with him so that he will not be what everybody else want him to be and that what he's speaking to. You see what I'm saying? They may want to water it down so that they can strike a deal. So if he becomes president, maybe he will continue to do the bidding of those who accept him in power. Oh, and I said this, and I want to say this. I don't know why this slipped my mind at first. You know, we have Scott Ritter. He'll be on the show Friday at 11 Central, 12 Eastern time Friday. Monday, that following Monday, Friday, Scott Ritter. Then you got Saturday, Sunday, and then that Monday, we'll have co-founder of Scholars for 911 Truth, author, podcast host, and international personality, Kevin Barrett on the program. Okay, he'll be on, and we'll be doing it at 10 Central, 11 Eastern. That's 10 Central, 11 Eastern this coming Monday. So Friday, Scott Ritter. Monday, Kevin Barrett. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up for you all. I haven't been able to schedule the show yet because I just got home, and as you can see, look in the back, the screen is makeshift because I had to jump on real quick and just answer a few things and talk over a few things that came to me by email or whatever like this. And also for the channel members, let me say this to you before we get back to the subject at hand. If the video doesn't drop tonight, it'll drop tomorrow sometime for the channel members. Okay. Just, I'm running behind. Please forgive me. Charge it to my head and not to my heart. All right. God is good. Now, let's read a little bit of this. Former U.S. President Donald Trump appeared in court in Miami, Florida, on Tuesday for an initial hearing after he was charged with mishandling government documents. Trump pleaded not guilty and maintains that the 37-count indictment is a Stalinist attempt by President Joe Biden to sideline his leading political rival. Now, I won't discredit what Trump is saying, but we also, I think it's mishandled what Trump is saying. Man, just tell it like it is. It's the people who bagged this man. It's those people who, because we know that Biden is just a shell of himself. So it's the people who are actually running the White House. It's the people who call the shots to the people who run the White House. All right? I hate when people play with words like that and just pussyfoot around the word or something like that. You know what I mean? Instead of just being direct to a person. We know that it's the deep state and the neoliberals and the neocons and even some of the people that you ran with in circles. A lot of that. And you may have offended some of them, and they joined sides to show you that you're not as big as you think you are. And they're going to use the justice system and everything that they can, the media and everything. So a few days ago, and I'm going to get off Trump in just a second. So I think it was 2 days ago, maybe a day ago. I was sitting down, and I was having coffee over my mother's house. And so her TV was on, I think it's CBS, CBS or NBC1. I think it's CBS. And we were about to turn to something that she and I watch all the time. We were going to watch something. When I'm over there, me, her, and my brother, we go over there and we have coffee with my mom, and then we watch a few things. So I told her, I said, don't turn, let me see what's going on. So they were talking about Trump. And let me tell you how they do things. Man, I'm telling you, if the system is not corrupt, you tell me what is. So as we watch this thing unfold about the indictment, when they revealed the indictment against Trump, I'm looking at Norah O'Donnell. You know, she used to be on MSNBC. And then I think she transferred to NBC. And then now I think she's at ABC now. And she has a show. And she's doing this show, and she has all these pundits at the table with her. And she's talking. She's downing Trump. She's legitimizing the charges against Trump and delegitimizing Trump's statements against the charges, right? And then after all the delegitimization that she's using against Trump and all of the vilification that she's pouring on Trump, she says, let's not get too political into this because we don't want to taint the people's views. We want, what the hell do you mean you don't want to taint the people's views after spewing all that venom that you spewed? So you want to seem impartial after showing your partiality. Make this make sense. Again, only in bizarro world will you see things like this. And the reason that you're starting to see it more and more in the public is because the system is imploding. As long as they were able to hold things together financially and politically and militarily, you didn't see this as much. But now that the wheels are falling off economically, and now that nations are challenging America's dominant position in every field that she dominated in, specifically and especially the Chinese. And now America is feeling the pressure, the pressure of maintaining dollar hegemony, the pressure of maintaining all of those bases around the world, the pressure of trying to exert force and power and influence the world over, and the pressure of trying to maintain a civil society when civil has left the society and we see nothing but deterioration and an implosion of American society. The wheels are falling off. So it's hard to keep that in the closet when the closet no longer has doors, when the closet no longer is in a house, when everybody is able to look at all your secrets, right? So that's why we're seeing more of this, more and more of this. Let's see something. Okay, my screen is back up. Okay. Now, I was checking to see if there were any major statements in the chat, and I was going to put them up on the screen and address something. Maybe if they have something they want to address, they can put it in the screen. But I want to go to something right now. And I want to bring your mind back to show you just how America's position has become very precarious. And before I do that, I want to say something very trivial first. So I got an email by somebody that knows me and asked me, why do you have a beard? You don't never wear a beard. Let me say this again. I have very, very sensitive skin. I can only shave so many times a month, or my skin breaks out. I've been to dermatologists, I've been to a specialist. I don't know why. I've tried everything. It doesn't work with me. So, and my skin gets real tight. So sometimes I have to let the hair grow out so that I can shave it off again. Okay. So please, for those of you who are paying that close attention, please just give your brother a way out. Okay. Don't think harsh of me. Give your brother a way out. But I want to show you just how precarious a situation that the U.S. empire now finds itself in, because I want to bring something to your attention. You may not remember this, but when Barack Obama was the president and Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton orchestrated the overthrow of the legitimate government in Honduras. And they used the Honduran police force and the military to help overthrow the Honduran government, right? And they wanted to stop the rise of the left-leaning leaders that were popping up and sprouting up all over Latin America. So they overthrew Morales in Bolivia, and they overthrew the president of Honduras, and they tried to overthrow the president of Salvador. They tried to overthrow the vice president of Argentina, who was the president. They tried to get her on some trumped up charges, and they put the most popular political figure in the last 100 years in Brazil in prison, and who is now the president now. But I'm saying this to show you the precarious situation that the United States now finds itself in what is regarded as her own backyard, right? Lula da Silva has once again become the president of Brazil. We see Kirchner, who was the vice president and was the president of Argentina, back in power in some shape, form, or fashion. We see in Bolivia, the former president, Morales, his party, back in power. And we see that the people of Peru will not stop protesting against the illegitimacy of the government imposed upon them by the United States. And now we see a turn of heads back to Honduras, right? And what's significant about what I'm trying to say to you all? Well, you'll see it here. And you'll see, when you see this short video, it should show you that American power is not as solid as it once was. Because remember, they overthrew the legitimate government and installed their government in there. And now, years later, look at the path that Honduras is turning towards. Check this out right here.
Honduras has opened an embassy in China months after severing relations with Taiwan in favor of ties with Beijing. The Honduran foreign minister and his Chinese counterpart took part in the inauguration of the embassy on Sunday morning. As just days earlier, the Honduran president began her first 6-day visit since reestablishing diplomatic relations between the nations. Back in March, Honduras cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan and recognized the island as part of China. The switch brought the number of countries that officially recognize Taiwan down to 13. The Honduran president also met with the president of the BRICS New Development Bank in Shanghai. According to an official statement, the country also filed an application to join the institution. The main task of the bank is to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and developing countries. Asia political risk analyst Ross Feingold believes that the U.S. may warn Honduras as it has other nations that are growing closer to China.
Frankly, it might be more significant for China than for Taiwan. It gives China a presence in an additional country in Central America, obviously close by to the United States. So that's going to be of concern to United States policymakers. It'll present some business opportunities for Chinese companies, typically, and I think we'll see this in the coming hours or days. There'll be some announcements about infrastructure deals through aid by China, and that's going to result in contracts for Chinese companies. There'll probably be a lot of warnings. They'll say it's bad for you, Honduras, just like the United States warns African countries or other countries in the developing world about having too close a relationship with China. And another kind of battleground for that in recent years has been in the Pacific Ocean, the Pacific Island countries, whether it's Solomon Islands, has been in the news a lot for this very reason.
So he says the United States warns. See, she doesn't talk to people. Listen, I want you to try this if you think I'm joking. Go into a room with a lot of alpha males or alpha females. Talk down to them and dictate to them and see how that works out for you. Okay? When you show disrespect and you continue to ignore the wills, the desires, and the securities of others, that event that really doesn't work out in your favor over time. And we see Honduras has now pivoted towards BRICS. The Honduras has now recognized China in Beijing to be the head of the one China policy, right? All to the detriment of what the United States is trying to do, trying to isolate Russia, trying to isolate China, trying to isolate Brazil, trying to isolate India, trying to isolate South Africa, trying to isolate each one of them and then use each one of them to help them pick off the other ones so that they can destroy the BRICS organization, destroy the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and maintain dollar hegemony, which by extension means maintaining British pound hegemony, which means maintaining euro hegemony. That's the plan, but it's not working out. And as the guy said, America likes to threaten Africa. Remember a clip I played yesterday about Africa? We're going to play that 2-minute clip again to show you just how things are breaking away from America's supreme currency, the US dollar. Okay? Listen close to this. This is 2 minutes. I'm going to try to get in a few because I don't know how long the show is going to go. So bear with me, please.
Now on to other news. Kenya's president is seeking to establish a pan-African payment system to help ditch the bullish US dollar from global commerce.
We are all struggling to make payments for goods and services from one country to another because of differences in currencies. And in the middle of all these, we are all subjected to a dollar environment.
Kenya's president has urged his African counterparts to mobilize central and commercial banks to join the system launched last January. The so-called Pan-African Payments and Settlement System eases intra-African trade and was backed by the African Union and central banks. The president argues that African businessmen should concentrate on moving goods and services and leave the currency activities to the African Export-Import Bank. According to an associate professor at the University of South Africa, forming one currency for all of Africa is not an impossible task.
The idea behind the dollarization of the currency and getting a Pan-Africanist currency stems from a background that Africa wants to rely on its own currency in buying and purchasing, exchanging of goods, and also in creating reserves for Africa as a continent. And the bigger idea is to find one common currency for Africa in that regard that will be used by the central banks in Africa. It is not an impossible task. Remember, there are multiple reasons why Africa must get its own house in order in as far as the de-dollarization is concerned. The dollar means it's a process of recognizing the United States of America dollar as a medium of exchange, and that impact on the pricing of gold and other commodities. And as a result, it's very important that Africa, for it to be recognized as the world economic.
So now we're going to go to something else real quick, too. I'm trying to get it as much on this de-dollarization out so that you can see. See, it's one thing for me to tell you. It's another thing for you to hear and see what is taking place. And this, in and of itself, is the main driver behind American intransigence, behind American imperial policies and the provocations of Russia and China. See, listen, right now, most African nations are small on a global scale, right? But if they continue to eat their Wheaties, their political and geopolitical Wheaties, they become strong, right? And by watching what China and Russia is doing and by having them invest in these nations and vice versa and having trade, they build up their economies, which in turn builds up their political clout, which in turn build up their military clout. But America feels that if I can knock Russia off, if I can knock China off, or knock one of the two off, then I can stymie the rise of Africa, or I can stymie the rise of Latin America, or I can stymie the rise of Asia or Eurasia. And I can keep everybody in Europe submissive to me because they have little to no resources and they will have to rely on me after alienating Russia. Okay? So she is hell-bent on trying to maintain dollar hegemony. But it ain't looking good, like they say on the streets. It ain't looking good for the American dollar. I want you to listen closely to this again.
So, the global trend to de-dollarize certainly continues, as India's new trade policy features their decision to move away from using the US dollar for foreign deals. The new policy comes into effect at the beginning of this month, April, to help promote India's foreign trade and bolster domestic production. Meanwhile, the Indian rupee is getting an awful lot of attention these days and is expected to become a global currency in the not-too-distant future. This comes as Delhi and Moscow have agreed to pivot from using the US dollar in their bilateral trade. Let's take this conversation further.
What's significant about that? Okay, Moscow and India agreed to trade for India to buy oil and rupees. Now, let me tell you something. India likes to ride the fence. I hate to say this, but this is the reality of it. I have to tell the truth. I'm a straight shooter, so I have to tell the truth. India likes to play both sides to the middle, okay? So to benefit from Russia, to benefit from the organizations that Russia and China leads, and also to get help from the West and to be an instigator sometimes against the very people that she claims to be aligned with. Now, why do I say that? India stoked up the border tensions with China under U.S. auspices. Most people don't know that. They did that. And it happened at a time where America was piling pressure on China, right? At that time, nobody wanted to acknowledge this, and I might lose people in the East that watches the show. Man, that's a sidebar to me. Listen. And then India wants to be aligned with the West in Asia, but really publicly unaligned. She wants to be a part of the Quad. She wants to be a part of the other things. She wants to be a part of a loosely gathering of nations led by the United States. But she wants to be independent at the same time. Now, here's the thing right here. She alienated Russia. 70% of her military hardware was Russian, right? Russia leased I think it was a Kula-class submarine to India a while ago. Most of you are unaware of this. This happened a while ago, but I'm going to bring it to the forefront. And this is a top-of-the-line submarine. And India broke the agreement that they had signed with Russia and allowed the U.S. to go in and inspect the Kula-class submarine. Most people don't even know that. So this caused tensions between Russia and India in a way. But check this out. So India knew that Russia was in a tough position with the sanctions by Europe and America. And what they did, they wanted to also sidestep China, because China, the yuan is all the attention, and it is becoming an international accepted currency, and it is getting more accepted all over, and China is rising, and it's become the economic engine of the world. So instead of doing what was expedient and what was right and using the Chinese yuan to exact trade between India and Russia, India reneged against that with Russia, and then Russia was in a bad position because they needed currency. And so they agreed on rupees. But check this out. The rupees, some of them are being held in the Indian banks, and because of conversion rates, Russia doesn't have really a lot of access to those rupees, and India does not want to correct that situation, but they want Russia to supply them with weapons. And on top of that, check this out. I know some of you didn't know this, so I'm gonna let you know all this. So on top of that, Russia has been asking India to let's do this thing so that we can have access to our funds. I'm talking about billions and billions of dollars in rupees that India is holding. And India has been playing this makeshift game like they played with Iran, with the Chabahar port. They've been doing this. And so now certain companies and banks in India, they're being forced to use the yuan in transactions with Russia now, because Russia does not want to acquire more rupees that are useless internationally. Okay? You understand? So I'm saying that, I'm just giving you an insight of what's going on economically, right? India wants to play the fence, but they're losing, and they realize this because now there's a strategic alignment between Russia and China, and this is what India did not want. Okay? So now she enters back in the fray and is trying to save face by acting as if she's been gung-ho Russia the whole time, and that has not been the case. I want to put that out there so people can understand exactly what is taking place. Now, let me go to something real quick. All right. Where is it at? Most of you don't realize also that the United States tried to bypass all of the agreed protocols of NATO when they're inducting people to fast track India into NATO. You know that? Do you know a few years ago that India signed a basing agreement with the U.S. and the U.S. has rights to go into India and use certain bases? Do you know that? So now, and this was done under Modi, the so-called nationalist, right? The war criminal, because he is that. He is responsible for the slaughter of thousands of Muslims in India. He is responsible for that. He was the governor, and he was the one who promoted that violence there. But he gets no credit for that, okay? But anyway, I want you to see something. Let me go to this to show you something real quick.
A lot of Americans still have that NATO treaty construct in their heads. The reality is that is not a template that applies to India. See, one of the challenges of a changing world is how do you get people to accept and adjust to those changes. Even today, not just with this committee, I see this, in analysis of various kinds and writings of people. A lot of Americans still have that NATO treaty construct in their heads. So any situation they deal with, they use that like a it seems almost like that's the only sort of template with which, or only viewpoint with which they look at the world. The reality is that is not a template that applies to India. Yeah. So I must say a lot of it is actually outside the administration. The administration understands this very, very well. So we have a situation where actually in many areas, the administration has been very forthright, very understanding, very cooperative. And sometimes people mean well. I mean, in this case, I think they mean well. They really want to signal saying, let's do more with India. It's just they use a terminology because that is what is in their habit. So I would not go so much by the terminology. I would only appreciate the fact that a congressional panel has the sentiment to want to do more with India. I think that's a very good thing.
want to use India as a bridgehead against China and Russia. And for years, India has been punching above its weight against China. And America, listen to me good. This is what America does. She's like that lover boy. Let me tell you, she has game now. America has game for you. Listen, she's the lover boy. And she sees all these pretty women, right? And she spits game to them. And she says, hey, if you let me be your man, this will be an equal relationship. And I can share with you my wealth and my technology and my military prowess and this and this and this. And if you succumb to that, right, you don't become his America's woman. You become her female dog, if you know what I'm talking about. That's what you become. You become subservient to the empire. And so when she spits game and then you finally accept it, there's no equals. Only subservient vessels. If you think what I'm saying is not the truth, name a totally independent NATO member outside of the United States. Where we say, well, Turkey is. Yeah, but Turkey is not fully independent because they are still measuring what they're doing. The United States still have nuclear weapons in Turkey. How more independent can you be when you're hosting nuclear weapons that are controlled by the second largest nuclear power? How much independence can you assume that you have when a situation like that arises? So you don't become independent, you just get ensnared in the war machine and you become a cog in it, right? There's no more independence. There's no more sovereignty. There's no more individuality of country or nation. There's only subservience to U.S. policy dictates. All right? And America's dictates are that I am number one and I am number one at all costs, and there can be no rival, no equal, no near power, and everybody must succumb to what I say and what my policies are. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, then why are they threatening to sanction nations that do trade with Russia? Why are you thinking that? I want to show you the insanity of the empire. China, the largest investor in the United States, the largest investor in Europe, the largest trade partner with the United States, the largest trade partner with Europe, right? The largest exporter to America, the largest exporter to Europe, right? The largest importer from the United States, the largest importer from Europe. Now, you would think with this economic clout and now becoming the number one economy with purchasing power parity, according to the IMF and the CIA, this is the greatest and the most correct metric to use when comparing economic power of a nation. And the IMF and the CIA says that the United States was surpassed years ago by China. So if we look at that, common sense tells you if 93% of all my goods on all of my shelves and all of my businesses come from China, and common sense tells me that all of my uniforms and all of my shoes, my hats, my lapel pins, my flags, my motherboards to my computers, my warplanes, my guns, everything come from China. And I am in debt to the tune of $1.2 to $1.3 trillion to that nation. Do I go and stoke tensions with China and its renegade province of Taiwan? Do I go and stoke tensions with China and Japan? Do I go stoke tensions with the Philippines and China? Do I do it with South Korea and China? Common sense tells me that that is not beneficial for me, because if they pull their resources out and I have little financial resources anymore, then I'm the loser in the end. That's what common sense tells you. But in the mind of the berserker, that doesn't hit home. I am and there is none other. This is Nebuchadnezzar, America, and Belshazzar. Look at what my hands have wrought. I am, and there is none other. That's America. She's not thinking of the ramifications of her policies. Okay, say for instance, we look at what she's doing. She has sanctioned. I want you to think of the madness of this, because some people don't take the time out to just sit down and let this marinate. America had the gall to sanction some Chinese tech companies, some Chinese military hardware companies, and some Chinese individuals, right? All the while, they owe China $1.2, $1.3 trillion. All the while, the greatest infrastructure investor is China. All the while, China is the largest financer. All the while, 93% of all goods on your shelves come from China. All the while, 98% of all what they call what are those minerals? Rare earth minerals that the United States uses in all critical components come from China. Now, common sense tells the average person, I'm not going to antagonize this person because there's so much. And here's another kicker. And 50 to 60% of all drugs that the US and the EU get come from India, right? But here's the kicker. 95% of all of the ingredients that India uses to produce the drugs come from China. So now, China is in every supply line, and you are antagonizing the largest economy in the world. Does that, listen to me, for you who are listening and you're in the chat, does that make sense to you? So when you see America doing this, it must be something else to this. They must see that they are no longer the global hegemon. They must see the writing on the wall. For you to antagonize, that's like you, and I can give the best examples. I'm the king, I'm supreme when it comes to analogies. That's like you getting a mortgage loan for a house. You get the house. You get a loan for your car from the same place, right? Then you go get your car serviced at a car service place that's owned by the mortgage company that you got your car and your home from. Then you go and get a personal loan from that mortgage company, and now you have to pay payments on it, and they determine what your payments are and the interest on that payment. And then you go to the furniture store to get furniture, and the furniture store is owned by the very company that gave you all of those other loans. But you need a loan for the furniture, so you fill out a credit card application, and the company that gives you the credit card is the very company that finance your car, your home, and everything else. And then you get mad and go in front of the very place that your whole livelihood depends on. Start picketing and throwing rocks up against the window. How is that going to work out for you? I'm asking. How is that going to work out for you? I hear a lot of financial pundits say this. Let me let this chair up a little bit. I hear a lot of financial pundits say this. That China is, they're in a debt trap. There's a lot of debt that they're hiding and blah, 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 blah. And China doesn't want people to see the real economy and this and this. They have cities that no one even lives in. And sooner or later, it's all going to come down and the debt will be too much and China will collapse. Okay. I hear a lot of the most respected pundits talk like this. And then my question to them is this. Because I'm going to acknowledge maybe that's the case. I'm not going to even argue with it. Maybe that's the case. Okay? See, this is what you do. You indulge them in the madness that they speak. I'm not going to argue with you, and I'm not going to say, oh, that's a lie, that's a myth, you just making that stuff up. I'm going to take your position on this, and I'm going to show you how foolish your position is. Let's just say that is the case for China. That they're just ensnared and they're just drowning in debt. And all of this stuff is going on, and the Chinese economy is about to implode. Now, we know that the United States owes China 1.2, 1.3 trillion. We know that the European Union owed China hundreds of billions of dollars. We know that other nations owe China tens of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, let us look at this through the eyes of the rational, the sane person, okay? Not through the eyes of Bizarro Land, but through the eyes of a sane person. Let's say that China is drowning in debt. Now let's look to the very nature of creation for this answer here. There's a statement that says the first law of nature is what? Is what? Self-preservation. Is that not right? Now, if my country is overloaded with debt, and you owe me, 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 before I go belly up and before I go under, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to call the debt on you guys, right? And if I call the debt on you, guess who goes down first? Common sense, right? Is that not right? Is that common sense? Because I can guarantee you, any of you in the chat, any of you in the just watching, if I owed you some money and you had to pay your mortgage and I had to pay my mortgage, you're not concerned with my mortgage at this moment. You're trying to get your money back so that you can pay your money, your mortgage, right? Well, that's common sense. Well, why aren't the economic scholars and pundits using that same rationale when dealing with China? Do they have a motive? Do they have some ulterior motive as to omit this same way of thinking? And if they do, we have to look at them different. And if they don't, we have to ignore them because we now see that they are not wise enough to look at it from a rational viewpoint, right? Common sense is not so common in today's world. You get me? You get me? Oh, yeah. God is good all the time. God is good all the time. Now, I want to go to something. I was going to play something about Biden's crimes, right? But we all know about Biden's crimes. I want to show you. Remember I told you on the last show and the show before last that these people are insane. The people in London, Washington, D.C., Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and every other capital in the Western world. These people are insane. And some people will say, well, no, you can't believe that these people will lead us to nuclear war. When a person shows you who they are, believe them. And they have shown us over and over again that they are willing to do any and everything to maintain power. And if they cannot maintain power, then they're willing to kill everybody on the planet Earth. If you don't think that is the proper way to look at it, then let us look at the stockpiles of nuclear armaments. Okay? Okay? One nuclear weapon is something. 10 nuclear weapons is something else. 100 nuclear weapons. We're talking about great destruction, right? But when we look at America and Russia, they have thousands of nuclear weapons. Why? Why? It's not for a party, right? It's not for a party. Why? Because in the mind of the people who rule, if I can't rule, I'm killing everybody. And you know why their mind state is like this? And we can prove it. Look at this. America has deployed weapons and nuclear armaments all around the globe. I'm going to play a clip on that in just a second, too. But she says that she has enough nuclear material to destroy the world, not one time, not two, not three, not 10 times over. American politicians and American generals have openly stated that America has enough nuclear weapons to destroy the earth 30 times over. Now, and then a sane, rational person will come behind it and say, well, if you do that, then where are you going to win? Where are you going to live? Because you can't live on Mars. You don't have the same essence or material that Mars has. Your very essence came up out of the earth. So you can't forget all those movies of intergalactic living. You're not from Pluto. You can't go and drink the water on Pluto because it has different compounds in it that'll kill you. One drop of it will kill you. So, if you win the war, you lost the war. Because if you kill everybody, what you gonna do? How you gonna resupply animals, plants, food, water, everything? They don't think about this because they're not rational. They're insane. And you've got to be insane to then provoke the largest nuclear power on the planet to war in his neighborhood where he has escalatory dominance. And now there's a report out saying that America now is about to supply depleted uranium shells to Ukrainian forces. Now here, I told you that was happening. I told you. And listen, regardless of that report, they've already supplied. Let me be the first to say this. When America's news report this stuff, man, this stuff has already been done a while ago. America was the one telling Great Britain to do it. And then she wanted plausible deniability because she wanted to see Russia's reaction to what Great Britain would do. Would Great Britain follow through? Well, Great Britain followed through. Now we wanted to see if Russia would then carry out some aggressive action against the UK. So when Russia allowed that to take place and dismissed it, guess what? That opened the floodgates for America to now publicly state that they are going to supply depleted uranium to Ukrainian forces. This, brothers and sisters who are listening to this, depleted uranium is, all it is spent fuel from nuclear weapons. That's what it is. So these bullets are miniature nuclear bullets. You can twist it the way you want to. So if you see them willing to use nuclear bullets, depleted uranium shells, you're telling me they're not willing to use nuclear weapons? Huh? These people are insane. And you're getting a bird's eye view of these gangsters and thugs, the real gangsters and thugs in suits. See, they want to vilify the people in urban America and suburban America and make you think that these people are the gangsters and the drug pushers and the violent people. Who is more violent than a person or a nation that goes around the world at will, blowing up infrastructure, destroying governments, right? Killing the masses of the people and occupying their states? Who is more gangster than that? Stealing the resources. When they went into Ukraine with that Maidan coup, the first thing that the United States did was confiscate the gold. When they sanctioned Libya and then bombed Libya back to the Stone Age, they stole all of Libya's currency reserves that were held abroad and all of the gold and silver that was held abroad. When they went into Iraq, two things that they did. Well, three things that they did. They secured the oil fields first. They went and took the central bank, right? When they took the central bank, they transferred the holdings, the currency holdings that Saddam had transferred from dollar denominations to euro denominations. And they changed them back from euro denominations to dollar denominations, even though that cost Iraq between $3 and $30 billion in reserves. And the third thing that they did was take the gold out. Nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about this. Let me put this up on the screen. Astro Atmosphere says, let me put this on the screen real quick. I like this. All right. I see Naheem 88. I'm sorry I didn't highlight your comment. You're a channel member. I was supposed to highlight your comment. Two of your comments, but I didn't do it. Charge it to my head and not to my heart. I was trying to break down this stuff and I didn't even see them. Please forgive me for that. Let's see. He says, ain't no other planets they can even get to, not even the moon, right? Well, you know, that's what I'm saying. So you blow up the planet. Where you going? See, they don't think about these things because they're insane. You know, when people become desperate, they do desperate things. And when people, you know, desperate people because they don't think about the consequences of their desperate motives, their desperate policies, and their desperate actions. Some people live to regret their actions, but then it's too late. because it's already in play. If you use nuclear weapons to destroy the planet, which planet are you going to live on? You going to Mars? What about Mercury? What about Saturn? Well, if you can't go there, then what the hell are you talking about blowing up this one for? Huh? These people are psychotic. Listen, there was a study done. And I was looking at the study. I should have brought that study up and put it on the screen for you guys. I should have done it. Man, I tell you what. But they were talking about sociopaths and people who are psychotic. And they talk about how these people are so into themselves, right? And how they want power and influence at all costs. So that's why you see a majority of people who have been elected to office or put into power, they exhibit signs of being a sociopath or being psychotic. This is a finding. This is a study that was done, multiple studies that was done. So when we look at these people, you can't look at them just because they can talk the straight lingo and because they have suits on, that these people are like you. All one has to do is look at the policies that they voted for and the policies that were enacted under their leadership. And you can tell whether or not these people are psychotic or sociopathic. And then they have the little man at the bottom fighting with each other, right? Yeah, this is how they continue to keep power. And they exercise this type of play over people on small levels and on grandiose levels. Excuse me. This is how they maintain power. This is the mind of a sociopath, that I can kill everybody and don't have to pay any price. Did you see any remorse from Hillary Clinton when they illegally bombed Libya back to the Stone Age and then sodomized and raped and killed the legitimate leader of the Libyan Arab Republic? No. As a matter of fact, she said, he came, we died, we came, we saw, he died. This is what she said, exhibiting all of the signs of a sociopath. Right? What about Madeleine the Kook Albright? When they asked her about the deaths caused by U.S. sanctions prior to, not talking about all the deaths that was caused after, but the deaths that was caused by U.S. sanctions on Iraq. Over 1 million children and men and women died because of U.S. sanctions. And they asked her, do you think that it was worth it? She smiled, she grinned, and she said, yeah, we think it was worth it. The death of 1 million people. If that's not psychotic, tell me what is. What about Barack Obama? As he shook the hand of the great leader of Venezuela, may he rest in peace and power, right? The great Hugo Chavez, as he shook his hand and then orchestrated a coup against him, and then thereafter had poisoned him where he got cancer. As a matter of fact, Kirchner, if you Google this, the president of, she's the former president of Argentina, Kirchner. I think her name is Christina Kirchner, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong with the first name, Kirchner or something. Just Google former female president of Argentina. And then when you get her name, put her name in the search engine and says that U.S. infected Latin American leaders with cancer. Google it. Hugo Chavez died of cancer. It came out of nowhere. Kirchner was diagnosed with cancer after running afoul to the United States. Other Latin American leaders, out of the blue, had cancer after running afoul with the United States. These policies are enacted by maniacs. Listen to me, because sometimes I don't think people understand just how crazy these people are who have their hand or their finger on the button or control police forces or control policy making or control the armed forces or control nuclear weapons. These people are crazy as hell. Look at what they do. Don't look at what they say. Look at what they do. Because their actions mean more than what their words are telling you. Is that not right? Yeah, I see you. Could you rewrite that astral atmosphere? Could you rewrite that so that I can put it on the screen? Would you rewrite that statement again? I appreciate that. And then Naeem said, Brother Naeem said this. Let me put it up here. When I apologized to him, he said, no problem, no worries, brother. I really apologize because I was trying to break down some stuff. And I believe I saw it, but I wanted to get to it after I broke down so as not to obstruct what I was the point I was trying to make. And then it just went sideways because I wanted to address some other stuff, and I apologize for that. Now, again, let me show you just how much of a lunatic, how much of sociopaths these people are. I'm gonna play a clip for you all. This is about 4 minutes. Pay close attention to this, okay? Now you tell me if America wants peace, all right? Because I don't hear her making peace ships, flower ships, none of that. She makes warships, gunships, right? Destroyers, not builders, destroyers. This is what they make. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what they invest your hard-earned money into. Destroyers, not builders. Gunships, not food ships or aid ships, right? This is what they do. And I want you to look at this video and then tell me if these people are sane or rational, okay? And tell me whether or not the United States wants peace. Because how can you have peace and how can you want peace when you're on everybody's doorstep, at everybody's borders, provoking them, and then you have your military there, you're sanctioning people, you're trying to overthrow governments, and then your fail-safe, you plant nuclear weapons close to the hostile environments that you create. I want you to listen to this, okay? Right here.
The U.S. spent $83,000 every single minute on nuclear weapons in 2022, while also maintaining atomic warheads in Europe. That's according to a nuclear disarmament campaign group, which states that the weaponry is spread across numerous American military bases over 5 European countries.
Although, of course, there isn't kind of public confirmation or denial of U.S. nuclear weapons that are stationed in Europe, we do know that there are nuclear weapons stationed in 5 countries across Europe and Asia, in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, and Turkey. And civil society independent experts estimate there's about 100 to 150 warheads stationed across these countries at U.S. air bases.
This is a think tank that works closely with the United Nations to promote the UN's nuclear weapons ban treaty. They're the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons based in Geneva. Now, they're revealing here that the U.S. has its nuclear weapons stationed in Europe, specifically in Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey. And this isn't something that the U.S. tends to talk about, brag where the U.S. has the spokes of its nuclear umbrella and how far they extend across the planet. Instead, Washington and its allies are usually talking about Russia and Russia's recent decision, notably to transfer tactical nukes to one single ally, Belarus.
We strongly condemn the arrangement. It's the latest example of irresponsible behavior that we have seen from Russia since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Newest nuclear gamble with the nuclear weapons moved to Belarus constitutes a new escalation and poses a direct threat to European security.
The representative from the State Department, the U.S., talking about the fact that this is just, Russia is just going way out of bounds, and the EU saying exactly the same thing, not talking about their particular situation at all, which is far more widespread. Think tank where, a lot of members are former United States high-level officials, former directors of the CIA. So it's an establishment think tank that's very close to Washington. Now, they've put forward the argument, catastrophic deterrent, in other words, these big nuclear weapons, the kind that the U.S. deploys in Europe, have little military value. Why? Because, they're catastrophic. They're meant to be a deterrent. They're not actually meant to be used. And that's exactly why the U.S. freaks out when Iran develops nuclear weapons, or when they hear about North Korea potentially getting nuclear weapons, or any other country that they might want a regime change. They know that that is an insurance policy against regime change, because nobody really wants to deploy nuclear weapons. But they also argue that tactical nukes, the kind that Russia is planning to deploy inside its ally Belarus, they're saying, well, those are actually usable nukes, because, they're little nukes, like cute little things. You can just, boom, blow up a desk. It does a little damage, but, they're deployable. Come on, give me a break. I mean, they still have a radiation yield. What's the difference between a big mushroom cloud and a slightly smaller mushroom cloud? So it's an argument that just doesn't fly, but that's how they try to justify it. And this report that came out of this think tank in Geneva also touched on nuclear spending last year in 2022. And they pointed out something really interesting. They said that Russia spent only 22% of what the United States spent on its nuclear arsenal last year, and that China only spent 25%, about a quarter of what the U.S. spent on its nuclear arsenal. So we're talking about a figure for the U.S. of $43.7 billion that the U.S., Washington, spent on its nuclear arsenal. So there you go. A lot of double standards happening here.
What Mike Maloof said, the former Pentagon official, when the government gives you, when the Defense Department gives you a amount on spending, you take that and you double or triple that, right? So we're going to say roughly America spent about $200 billion on nuclear armaments or upgrades or whatever, right? Now, what does that have to do with the security of the United States? Because it's making the world more insecure. And how can you have security within your borders if there's no security outside, and vice versa? Okay, if you're destabilizing the world, how can you be stable at home? Because something's gonna bubble up. Now you're using all of your wherewithal, your political clout that you have left, all of your economic clout that you have left, and you're dithering it away. You just because you're trying at every level to stop the rise of other people. Somebody gave me some good advice. When you're trying to build something, when you're trying to do something, don't be too concerned about what everybody else is doing. Do you and work hard to get your goal over. And when you've gotten your goal over, then you take a look around at what other people are doing. But this is not the case with the American government. They want to be in everybody's business everywhere, dictating how everybody should live, everybody should be governed, and how every government should act. And all the while, they discard all kinds of international laws and even laws that they initiate. Now tell me, how can this be a productive world when you have a loose cannon like that, a pariah state like that, with a pariah organization, military organization? Because remember, NATO is not a defensive organization. Was it NATO's defense going in there and bombing Yugoslavia to smithereens and then balkanizing it? Was that in NATO's defense? Did Yugoslavia fire one bullet at NATO? Huh? So if Yugoslavia did not provoke or did not fire one bullet at NATO and NATO went on the offensive, then how the hell can NATO be a defensive organization? Did Libya fire one bullet at NATO? No, they did not. Did Libya go on the offensive in Europe? No. See, they always talk about European security. This is what I'm talking about. European security. What the hell you mean European security? Europe is making everybody else insecure with the bombings around the world. How the hell can you profess about some security for you when you're destabilizing everybody else? So Europe is the only one that is allowed to enjoy security. The NATO alliance is the only one that is able to enjoy security and peace. Man, if you don't get out of here with that mess, see, you can talk down to somebody else. You can't talk down to me. Did Libya go into Europe or did Europe go into Libya? Did Chad go into Europe, or did Europe go into Chad? Did Mali go into Europe, or did Europe go into Mali? And we can go down the list. And if we can say that none of those states went into Europe and the United States, but the United States and Europe went into them, how in the hell can NATO be a defensive organization? They have shown us nothing but offense. When a person shows you who they are, what? Believe them, right? So you can talk defensive all you want to, but it is you and your policy and your running roughshod all over the world, destabilizing, bombing, destroying, and uprooting governments, leaders, and nations that is causing instability. And then this is what trips me out. And this is why people get mad at me. Europe is screaming about an epidemic that is underway, an influx of illegal migrants that are crossing the borders. They're on boats and ships, makeshift ships and stuff. And that Europe cannot take on the weight of accepting all of these migrants, right? This is what they tell you. And this is what they put forth to the people there because of the financial burden that is on the governments of Europe to bring them in and to, I guess, assimilate them or to help them out. And then you have people screaming to the top of their lungs, no more, close the borders, do this and do this, blah, 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 blah. Now, if Europe would have took that approach from jump, they wouldn't have been in this position. If they would have closed their borders and not gone into other people's borders, then you wouldn't be experiencing an influx of migrants. Libya didn't bomb you, you bombed Libya. Somalia didn't bomb you, you bombed Somalia. Chad didn't bomb you, you bombed Chad. The Central African Republic didn't bomb you, you bombed it. Mali didn't bomb you, you bombed it. So where these migrants are coming from, it's the work of your hands. You overthrew the governments. You destroyed the government institutions that make nations viable nations and independent and sovereign nations. So when the people are running from being destitute because you have destroyed every avenue which they may have security and a life of progress, and now they're going towards you, you're screaming about an influx of migrants when it is of your own making. Accept responsibility for what you've done. You refuse to accept the responsibility. You put it on everybody else's back but the cause of it. America and Europe is going around the world destroying and uprooting and overthrowing, color revolution and assassinating people. And then when these people from those nations think that Europe and America owes them some, close the borders. But you've destroyed the institutions. You've put mobs in positions of power. And now you have warlords all across these lands, but it doesn't matter to you because you send in covert teams to extract resources so that you can use the resources for the garden, while everybody outside of the garden is dealing with pandemic, dealing with disease, dealing with lack of food, dealing with lack of security, dealing with lack of water, dealing with lack of legitimate government. But that's at your hand. That's your doing. You can't tell me what I'm saying here is wrong. So why don't you man up? Listen, let me say this, and I know time is at its end, but I'm a straight shooter. I don't know any other way to be. Listen, me and my brothers and my sisters, we're straight shooters, so sometimes we have to watch how we talk to each other. Because we talk to each other not in a aggressive manner, but we talk to each other in a straightforward manner. And we realize that most people don't do that because that's the way society is. They beat around the bush and they don't talk to each other in a straightforward manner. Well, that's the way I was brought up, to talk to you in a straightforward manner. You deal with it or you don't. So let me talk to you for a minute before we close the show out. Why is it that Europe and the United States always ask and demand other people to man up to their responsibilities, But when it comes to the government of America and the governments across Europe, they never accept responsibilities for their policies. Was it Russia that sanctioned the European Union, or was it the European Union that sanctioned Russia? Was it Russia that stole the Europeans' money, or was it the European Union that stole Russia's money? Was it Russia that banned European oil and gas, or was it the European Union that banned Russian and oil gas? Russian gas and oil, okay? Was it that? So if we see that, there's a pattern here. And when we look at the pattern, we can see Western intransigence, Western arrogance, and a teeny bitty bit of racism in this stuff. Everybody is required to do and act in a certain manner that the West will not do and act like. Everybody must man up. Everybody must accept responsibility. Everybody must do this and must do this and that. And yet America and the European Union often discard it. And then they go before you as purveyors of peace when they are purveyors of violence. When they go talking about peace and security, think about this. And I know this is making people mad, but hey, this is impromptu, and this is something that people need to hear. You know, like a doctor. Sometimes when you go to the doctor, you're scared for the diagnosis because you think it's something bad. But when the doctor does his diagnosis on you, he gives you his thoughts on, hey, listen, yeah, this situation is bad, but listen, maybe we can remedy this if you start doing this, and then we can help you along the way by doing this. So we've come up with a plan to treat your ailment. But if we leave the ailment untreated, then guess what happens? The disease metastasizes and it eats the host up from the inside out, right? So what we see is arrogance, hubris, and racism eating the Western world from the inside out. They don't want to accept the responsibility for the unstable world. Who is the number one military power on the planet? Huh? It's the United States. Now, I want to ask you this. Has Africa invaded the United States? Does African nations have any bases in the United States? No. Has Latin America, you say, well, Latin America, there's an influx of Latin American people coming into the United States. Well, I ask you this. Why? Why? Does America has the right to control her border? Yes, she does. But she also has the responsibility to accept the root cause of what's causing this. It is the overthrow, the decades of overthrowing leaders that you don't agree with. It is the stealing of wealth. It is the covert operations to destabilize and foster color revolutions across Latin America. All of that preceded the influx of refugees. So if we're going to deal with the refugee crisis, we got to deal with the crisis in hand. Okay? Europe, the same thing. Did Africa invade you? Any African nation invade? Tell me one African nation occupying Europe. But I can tell you at least a dozen European nations occupying some part of Africa. Right now. While they talk about Ukraine's sovereignty and freedom. Is the Middle Eastern nations invading Europe or America? No. But can we see America and European nations with their military footprint in the Middle East? Yes. So when you get the blowback of these policies, you can't blame it on those people. You got to put the blame where the blame lies, at the root cause. This is the problem with America. They always skate. Listen, the Western world likes to skate by on excuses. They don't want to accept facts. Man, I'm telling you, I might get banned off YouTube for this one here. But it is what it is. You've got to man up. You've got to woman up and accept the responsibility. When we look at the situation in Libya, who's the cause of it? Huh? And look, there's still bloodshed up to the horse's bridle in Libya. There's still sectarian violence in Libya. They still have Black Libyans in cages parading them in Libya. All brought to you by, some of you black people gonna get mad at me, by the first black president of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, right? All brought to you by the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization, NATO. And you want me to scream and cry over Ukraine when you have bombed Libya, bombed the Central African Republic, bombed Mali, bombed, you're even in Eritrea and all of these other nations trying to destabilize them. And then when they don't bow to you, you want to sanction them. As a matter of fact, while we're on this subject, let me play a clip for you to show you what Ethiopia is saying. Ethiopia is slamming the U.S. and the UN for what they're doing. See, I told you, the UN and the IMF and all this stuff, these are levels of power that are run by the United States, Great Britain, and Europe. And when you don't dance to the tune that they're playing, they snatch the chairs, they push you out the ballroom, and then they stick you up. Listen to what it said right here.
This decision to cut off the much needed food supply to Ethiopia is really seen as a political one, at least in the views of the federal government spokesperson, who says that this is a political decision and it's largely taken on the basis of the conflict which had engulfed the country in the Horn of Africa following 2 years of unrest and civil strife between the federal government forces as well as the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Now that conflict was reached a ceasefire, at least from the African continent, which was negotiated here in South Africa in the capital city, Pretoria. This was seen as the African solution to an African problem, and it really promised to at least give further momentum to some of the programs that had stopped as a result of the fighting, which led to many lives being lost. Now, the United States government, represented in this case by the US aid, as well as the United Nations, represented by the World Food Program, are saying that that food supply that they had been providing to Ethiopia was really curtailed and food was diverted from its intended targets and it went elsewhere. The Ethiopian government are saying they cannot solely be the ones to blame following this diversion, and they have committed, together with the both agencies, to a full investigation that will uncover where this food has been going and what has led to the current situation that we have. But the two agencies are saying that the general food supply which they had been providing would stop, but not the basic needs in terms of the school programs which we have seen receiving some of the food supply, as well as those of pregnant and lactating women, as well as pastoral farmers which continue to breed cattle and provide the food assistance that Ethiopia has been providing on its own. But for a more curtailed view of the issue, here are the views of Ms. McCain, who is the Executive Director of the World Food Program.
Food diversion is absolutely unacceptable, and we welcome the government of Ethiopia's commitment to investigate and hold accountable those responsible. While we will temporarily hold food aid assistance in Ethiopia, nutrition assistance to children, pregnant and breastfeeding women, school meals programs, and activities for building the resilience of farmers and pastoralists will continue uninterrupted.
Ms. McCain there really emphasizing what they are willing to do in the meantime before a solution is reached, but only one wonders how long it will take for this investigation to really and earnestly be underway and how quickly it could be done with, considering the millions of lives at stake that continue to depend on this food program.
At the time of in Ethiopia, a high number of refugees, 50% of Ethiopians are need aid. Around 20 million Ethiopians need direct food from the foreign organization or the aid organization. This is cut from the World Food Program, and US aid is exacerbate the current situation of the Ethiopian. There is also disaster, drought for the past 2 years in Ethiopia. So the situation more exacerbated by this action by US aid World Food Programs. Aid is the main part of the politics. The West take this situation, weaponizing aid, become the sole part of the political agenda, foreign policy, and also the West take in different countries, in different world countries, become aid and security are merged. So the Ethiopian government is claiming that based on these factors, starting from the West is using weaponizing all the aid services in order to attack the Ethiopian government. All over the Africa, we can see the same situation in the scenarios.
So when we look at this situation, I was just looking at something as he was talking. I just put in some key words: U.S. support Tigray against Ethiopia, and Eritrea blames U.S. support for Tigray's leaders for the war in Ethiopia. Now, Eritrea, a neighboring state, blamed the United States. Ethiopia blamed the United States. As a matter of fact, as long as the Tigray people were winning the war, the United States didn't say much. When Ethiopia put a halt to it and got Russian help and Chinese logistics and started beating back some of the offensives by the Tigrays, then America wanted to call a halt and wanted peace talk. See, this is what I'm saying. They hide their hand. They cause people to fight. They look at simmering ethnic and religious views and ethnic religious tensions, and then they hype that up, and then they supply one side, and then, like I told you, they whisper into that ear of that young woman and hype her head up and get her to do things that's out of character, and then we have war. And then they stand back as though they had nothing to do with it. And if we look at this, we can look at the Palestinian situation, and we can look at we can look at Black and Brown America situation. Because when you look at the situation, they talk about the Latinos, and Latinos are multiple colors in Latin America, But we're going to use the grouping word of Latinos, okay? They want to vilify Latinos coming through the border, right? But they're not talking about the destabilization process, which is causing them to run to something else. The overthrow of the governments, the destabilization, the influx of drugs, which the CIA continues to profit off. And then they go into Mexico, empower certain people, because remember, we have more proof, we have documentaries, we have books, we have all kinds that shows that America has been hand in glove with these drug cartels. And some of them were caught with U.S.-made weapons that are issued to the military, right? And then when it spills over into the U.S. border, it becomes a problem. But nobody talks about the underlying involvement of the U.S. government. When you look at urban America and you see the crime in Black and brown areas, you don't go back and you don't address Richard Nixon when he talks about that their plan was to vilify Black America, to have an influx of drugs and guns in urban America, to cause division there and stoke tensions, and then put it on the news every night to vilify them so that they can justifiably go in and wreak havoc on the community. Richard Nixon said it. Ronald Reagan followed through with a war on drugs, right? And they knew what had happened. Then Miss Clinton and Mr. Clinton talked about super predators, where they described Black and brown people as super predators, and initiated a 3-strike law, which white people that were caught with cocaine and were able to get lawyers got off. Black and brown people who were caught with crack, who were not able to, and some who were able to get lawyers, they were given prison time. Make that make sense. Where's the justice in that? And then we talk about the influx of violence. Again, I go back to something. Name me one Black or brown owned gun manufacturer. I'm not talking about place that sells guns. I'm talking about that manufactures the guns and the bullets in America. You can't find one. There are none. So if there are none, how in the hell do the guns continue to get in urban America? And if black and brown people don't control the borders, the satellites, the planes, the airports, the ships, then we got to say that this has to be out of their control. So stop addressing the symptoms and address the underlying disease. That's the only way to get to a cure. You understand? Man, I'm telling you, this is something else. And then when we look at the Palestinian situation, oh yeah, this is gonna get me kicked off YouTube. But I'm not advocating violence. I'm not advocating supremacy of one over the other. I'm not advocating sexism. None of that stuff. I'm advocating truth. And if you can prove what I'm saying is wrong, more power to you. Now, when we look at the Palestinian situation, which has engulfed the entire Middle East and North African region, how did this come about? When we look at history, it says that Hitler killed Jews in Germany. The Jews in Germany, I'm just giving you the rough estimate of what they say. This is what they give you. Then the Jews in Germany migrated to Palestine. Now I want to ask you a question. If the Germans were the ones who executed the Jews, then why have the Palestinians been made to pay for it? Why didn't the Germans give them a part of their country? They were the ones who did the killing. Because these people who claim to be Jews, these people are Khazars from over in Eastern Europe. And yet they have taken over Palestine and renamed it. And everybody's all right with that. Everybody's all right with that. And then they ask this question to try to shut you up. So you're not saying that Israel has a right to exist? Of course it has a right to exist, but exist where it's supposed to. You can't justify the existence of them by erasing the existence of an entire people who are indigenous to that land. That is like going over to Australia and saying, so you're not saying that the white Australians have a right to exist? Of course they do. But you can't have them ruling Australia when the Aboriginals are the true owners of that land. That's not right. That's not just. And you cannot think that right and good will follow from a wrong situation. I know people don't like to hear this, but it's something that needs to be said, especially in this controlled environment of social media. People don't want to hear it. I don't care. Put your fingers in your ear, turn the computer off, get to stepping. But I'm gonna teach the truth regardless to whom or what. All right? Now, man, I'll tell you what. See, I'm passionate about the truth, man. I'm passionate. I'm passionate. I didn't even mean to go this long. I did not. I didn't mean to go this long. I just wanted to come in an hour and talk to you guys and just let you know. And let me say this again. Remember, we're going to try to do a live tomorrow, okay? But at the same time, Friday, we're supposed to have Scott Ritter on the platform at 11 a.m. Central, noon time, Eastern time, okay? And that the following Monday, we're supposed to have co-founder of Scholars for 911 Truth, Kevin Barrett, on the show. It'll be 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, okay? So I want you all to know that I'm trying to bring you guys guests. Some people have blackballed me because I don't know how to, I speak the truth and they don't want that. Yeah, they want it to a certain degree, but they don't want it like me, unfiltered. They want to be able to dance around a few issues that are inconvenient for people. And I don't do that. Because you never get to a solution if you continue to dance around the issue. You can make money. You can grow your channel. You can grow followers. but you're not growing minds. And if you're not growing the capability of people to think for themselves and to think rational, you are becoming a instrument to take down civilization. Because as a civilized person, your duty is to teach civilization to all uncivilized. And you're supposed to be willing to do it at all costs. Alienate whoever you want, all that stuff. What is it? Astral Atmosphere says bizarro world, like you said. Right. This is what I'm saying. Bizarro world. Right? And it says, I'm trying to go up this. What just happened here? I just lost my screen. Anyway, I lost my screen over here. I guess we've gone long enough, and I guess YouTube saying, hey, it's time to pack it up. So listen, everybody. I please hit the like button. The way I speak might be like right in your face, right there in your face, and like with no filter. But sometimes that's what we need because nobody else is saying it. So good question, brother. Listen, I love you back. Love you back. I love every one of y'all that love truth. I love you back. And I'm a man and I'm going to tell you I love you back. Forget these stereotypes and all this stuff that's going on. It's too much hate out here. If you love truth, I love you. Sometimes I'm in your face without a filter, right? And sometimes that's a little bit too much for certain people to take. But I am who I am. I'm not going to put on for the cameras. I'm not going to put on to gain subscribers. I'm not going to put on to grow my channel. I'm fine with the people who are fine with truth. I'm fine with people who want intelligent discourse. I'm fine with people who disagree with me, but are agreeable to disagree with. I'm fine with that. But what I'm not fine with is people purposely misusing the truth and people omitting things so that they can grow their channel, grow their stature, grow their brand. That stuff is coming to an end because I'm going to call out a lot of people. I'm going to dime you out. Because if I know this stuff, then you should know it, especially if you got 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 subscribers. If you don't know this stuff and you're talking to the people, then you need to shut down because you are a steward to these people. And these people get understanding from you. They get news from you. And if you can't explain it and if you can't talk to them in depth about it, you need to sit down and let somebody else do it because it's too much at stake with this stuff. You know? Yeah. I got to put this up. I got to highlight, brother. I got to highlight the channel number. So while I'm highlighting the channel number, I want to say to everybody, please hit the like button. Please hit the like button. I really appreciate you. Please hit the like button. And also, if you don't like the show, hit the dislike button. Just hit some button. Don't just be inactive. Do something. That's the problem. Nobody really wants to do what it takes to get the job done. Right? They only want excuses. They want to blame everybody else, but they don't want to do their part in getting the truth out to the masses that could change their lives. But they're making money. They're making a lot of money. And money is not my thrill, baby. Life is so much more than money. You know? And when you get the truth, and truth illuminates you, money is a second or third priority, fourth priority. It's all about conversing with the people and letting them know what you know. And sometimes you learn from them. You learn what they know. And that's a beautiful thing to be in the circle of the gods and do that. You know what I mean? Now, on that note, I want to say this in closing. Please share the videos. Please like every time. Please tell people to subscribe because it seems like every time I get 30 or 40 subscribers, the platform loses 34 or 44 subscribers. And we know what's going on there because we've taken pictures of all of this stuff, okay? And the only way that we can beat the algorithm, the only way that we can beat the platforms is if you engage as well. On that note, I want you to know that I love you if you love truth. But always remember this, that the true and living God, he will always love you better. And if you know better, Do better to each other. Remember that, okay? Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. I love you and I thank you for your time. I really do. I thank you for your time because it is the most precious gift that you can offer to someone. I really appreciate your time. And if you like the channel, think about subscribing and becoming a channel member. New criteria, new material will drop sometime before the weekend. I thank you all. Hey, as I go out, I always got to say this. Mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. I love you. Peace.